Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubbs at the Club, your University of Idaho affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host this week, Brian Marceau, joined today by fellow co-host and full-time seducer down in Moscow, Martin Heemstra. Martin, how's it going, dude?
It's going great. It's warmed up a little bit since the snow we had over in Moscow recently, but I am doing good, and it's the holiday season.
Yeah, you guys are in for maybe a treat. It's the Marceau Martin Amateur Hour here. We still have football news we're talking about, guys. Honestly, some University of Idaho football news made today. So we'll just jump right ahead into Around the Bar, brought to us by Hughes River Expedition. If you're watching live on the YouTubes, as some might say, we've already given the news away. If you're listening via podcast, we have some huge, and I really mean this, huge football news for University of Idaho for the 2023 season. Jason Eck talked on the show a couple weeks ago about maybe we'd have some 2023 schedule news for the Vandals, specifically that D2 game against Western Oregon. And we have news. Next season, University of Idaho will not play a single non-D1 football game. The Vandals were able to ditch Western Oregon in place. Vandals are going to travel to Beaumont, Texas on August 31st to play Lamar University. Martin, can you tell me what their logo is? I have the screen zoomed in so I can see their logo. It's a bird that's red.
It's a card. Let's say they're the Lamar Cardinals.
Yeah, we'll put our crack research team on that until further notice. We're going to call them the Lamar Cardinals. And you know what, Martin? Maybe while I'm doing some research on that Lamar logo, maybe you can give a little background on who is Lamar for Vandal fans, because look, they're out of the Southland. There's no way the average Vandal who gives a shit about the Vandals gives a shit about Lamar. Who are they?
Well, they are a team that was, as Brian said, they are out of the Southland Conference. They are conference foes. They played against who Idaho lost to in the playoffs, Southeast Louisiana. They did have a cup of coffee in the WAC football conference for a little bit, but they decided to come back to the Southland and are now doing absolutely terrible, having lost to the Fighting Ed McCaffreys of Northern Colorado 14-21 this past season.
Yeah, so in the comment thread, we already have Kevin Ridenour, and if that's Ridenour, my bad. Saying no disparaging D2, but this makes me very happy. Jason Mayer, he's part of our crack research team, says pretty sure it's a Lamar Penguin. And full disclosure, Jason's very, very close. It is a Cardinal. Turns out Martin knew what he was talking about. So yeah, Lamar goes 1-10 last season. Only win came against Nicholls State. Nicholls State went 3-8 on the season last year on the Southland. When Martin says Lamar was in the WAC for a cup of coffee, he really means for a single season at max and jump back into the Southland. We'll hit the WAC ASUN later this episode, because there's been some instability in that conference, and it looks like there might be some more as well. I got to say, obviously this is a huge win for Idaho to get the D2 game off the schedule. Playoffs, look, if Idaho's going to be good, like Idaho was good this last season, if there's any sort of upward trajectory, schedule's got to be made with playoffs in mind. And phase one of getting the playoff, having playoffs in mind, is getting rid of the D2 game. But the other thing, Martin, I love that Lamar is terrible. Look, Lamar honestly might be worse than Western Oregon, going 1-10 in FCS play. I'm not saying they exactly are. Lamar was competitive with Northern Colorado, losing 21-14. But Big Sky teams don't have to care about out-of-conference strength of scheduling, because Idaho next season is going to play Montana, Montana State, Sacramento State, Weber State. Because of that, who Idaho plays out of conference is irrelevant. No matter what, Idaho's going to finish with a probably top 20, top 25 at worst strength of schedule, just based off of playing the Big Sky teams. So getting a gimme win in the out of conference, that's what teams do in the out of conference. Look at what Montana did, scheduled 3 gimmies in the out of conference, and that's how they got in the playoffs. So Martin, any last things you want to add about the Lamar? Well, it's a series, and Martin, thank you for having that graphic up. The one downside for Idaho is this is a road game, which means the Vandals are going to have 4 home games this upcoming season. The typical number is 5. I'm fine with this trade. Idaho will reciprocate and host Lamar in Moscow on September 12th, 2026. So it's a home and home, just takes a few years to deliver on the Moscow game. But any last thoughts, Martin, you have on this change to Idaho's upcoming schedules?
I am excited. Like, it's nice to have easy out of conference games instead of just sandbag getting punched in the stomach. Like, and again, like, I don't like looking ahead at all, but like the whole, like, this does more or less complete their 2026 home schedule with Lamar, Abilene Christian, Sac State, Montana, Eastern, and Montana State. So 2026 is going to be a hell of a home schedule for the Vandals.
Well, and you brought it up. You're right. Like 2026 is a long ways away, but for hardcore FCS fans, what you just heard Martin say is in 2026, Idaho has 2 out of conference FCS games with Abilene Christian too. So look, the schedule's moving in the right direction. You know, you pair traveling to Lamar, a shitty FCS team, with Idaho. One of their FBS games next season is against Nevada, a right now shitty FBS team. So relative to only having 1 FCS game, that's beating a Nevada team would be an upset for sure, Martin. But Nevada's a gettable FBS team. I mean, Sac State beat the shit out of Colorado State, which is to say bad Mountain West teams can absolutely lose to good Big Sky teams, which, I'm going to use that, Martin. That's our transition. We're talking about the Big Sky because there's non-Idaho news really scattered throughout the last week or so. Pretty big changes in the Big Sky as far as who's going to be running what programs. 5 schools are going to be in the market for a new head coach. We're going to start kind of at the top. Weber State head coach Jay Hill has left Weber State. He's going to become the defensive coordinator at Brigham Young University, which Jay Hill had been an off-season target of a lot of teams in the FBS, usually Mountain West type of quality for a while. Jay Hill's a picky dude, and he finally decided to go with BYU. Sacramento State head coach Troy Taylor, he's head coach at Stanford now. We talked previously on the show about Northern Colorado fired Ed McCaffrey. Well, they hired a dude named Ed Lamb, who's a Big Sky Conference veteran. Sacramento State, sorry, jumped ahead, Martin. Sacramento State hired defense. They promoted internally with defensive coordinator Andy Thompson becoming the new head coach at Sacramento State. Cal Poly lost Bo Baldwin to offensive coordinator at Arizona State. They promoted internally. Their offensive line coach, Paul Wolf, is now head coach at Cal Poly, a guy who's not new to the Palouse. And the Charlie Ragle bails on Idaho State after 1 season, and they hire former UC Davis offensive coordinator Cody Hawkins, 34-year-old Cody Hawkins, easily youngest head coach in the conference. So, Martin, that was a big dump in news. 5 schools are in play. 4 have named their head coach. Weber State has not yet named their head coach. But question I have for you on all the coaches we just named as head coaches, who right now of the names that you just heard, in your mind, hot take, who is the best hire?
Just for me, looking off of just resume alone, I think the hire of Ed Lamb at Northern Colorado is what stands out to me.
Yeah, Ed Lamb coached at Southern Utah from 2008 to 2015. Then he left Southern Utah. He was a special teams coordinator at BYU. So kind of Big Sky Conference, Big 12 now trade of Ed Lamb leaves BYU. Jay Hill joins BYU, except Jay Hill's defensive coordinator. But no, I got to agree, as in Ed Lamb has been successful not just in the Big Sky, but at places that are hard to be good at in the Big Sky. Coaching at Southern Utah in the Big Sky from 2012 to 2015 during Ed Lamb's tenure. Southern Utah in those 4 seasons under Lamb goes 5-6, 8-5, 3-9, 8-4. Made the playoffs twice, both the years they won 8 games. And in 2015, that 8-4 Southern Utah team went 7-1 in the Big Sky. Actually won a Big Sky Conference championship at Southern Utah, which is look, that's a pretty damn impressive feat, just winning Big Sky title anyway, Martin. But at a school like Southern Utah, mean, I've jokingly been calling Ed Lamb the compass now that he's at his second Big Sky directional school. Starts south, heads north. Hey, compass always points north. Good call, man. But Ed Lamb, immediate credibility to Northern Colorado, immediate stability. And honestly, I feel like Northern Colorado punched way above their weight class in grabbing Ed Lamb. We talked Martin, in our coaching search last year, before we knew Jason Eck was on the table. If Idaho had announced they hired Ed Lamb, I would have said Idaho made a good call. So to me, huge win for Northern Colorado in picking up Ed Lamb. Want to shift, not talking coaching candidates, though you can bring one up, or new head coaches, you can bring one up. There's two teams on this list of schools of new coaches that are not like the other three. And that's Weber State and Sacramento State. Sacramento State won the Big Sky or share of the Big Sky for the third year in a row. Weber State had won a share of the Big Sky for 4 years in a row heading into the 2021 season. Which team do you think it's most concerning for that they're losing for the program, historically good head coach, Weber State or Sacramento State?
As far as losing their head coaches, I think I'm going to go Weber State, because losing Jay Hill just seems like it's going to be a more costly to Weber State.
Yeah, Jay Hill he rebuilt Weber. I'm going to be researching Jay Hill's record right now while we're talking. But Jay Hill was only good at Weber State. And Weber State's also the only team that has not yet named who their head coach is going to be. I wouldn't be shocked if there's internal promotion because of how stable Weber State's been, but it's a real question what direction. Look, in the comment section, I missed that already, man. Cap Dan 58 says upgrade Ed for Northern Colorado. My bad, Cap Dan. Should have had that on time. Jason Mayer says Dirk Cutter to Weber State. Well, maybe. I mean, Dirk Cutter had been OC at Boise State, and maybe he wants to just hang around this part of the country coaching teams. But as a head coach, look, Jay Hill takes over Weber State in 2014, goes 2-10. No losing seasons after year one. It took 3 years. It took his third season for Jay Hill to get Weber State to the playoffs. That's 2016. Weber State goes 7-5. The Wildcats are in the playoffs from 2016 through 2020. Take 1 year off in 2021. Then Weber State made the playoffs this year, lost in the second round to Montana State. So there's no way to talk about Weber State football in the Jay Hill time other than to say it was a turnaround, and it was a damn fast turnaround. I really am kind of curious about the direction they go, because look, Sacramento State wasted no time promoting Andy Thompson, Andy Thompson, this is his first big head coaching job. He's been in the Big Sky for a while as a defensive coordinator, first at Northern Arizona and second at Sacramento State for the last few years. So that's some surprisingly good defenses, you might say, at Sacramento State, in that, look, just brain dead. People's reaction to Sacramento State's identity is to say very strong offensive team, which is true. But each of the last 3 seasons, Sac State's been a top 3 Big Sky defensive team. Sac State this year had the Big Sky Conference Defensive Player of the Year in Mapu Marte. He also was first team All-American as well. So even though Sac State kicks ass offensively, Troy Taylor is a very good offensive coach, very smart offensive coach. That team acquitted itself quite well. Martin, a thing I'm a little bit curious. I'm kind of concerned if I'm a Sac State fan is Sac State stayed internal. They've already promoted their former quarterbacks coach, which of course my links that I had up, we're down a man, which is going to slow this down. But Sacramento State already promoted their quarterbacks coach. Oh, his name's Bobby Fresquez. I guarantee I spelled that name wrong. To be their offensive coordinator. I stumbled around on that, guys, because Sacramento State, they divide their coaching duty heavily into 2. Every team obviously subdivides offense and defense, but Sac State was a fundamentalist version of this, in that Troy Taylor, he was the offensive coordinator. He had complete control of the offense, but he purposely had no say in the defense whatsoever. Andy Thompson, their new head coach, he was their defensive coordinator. He had 100% say in the defense, and then no say in the offense whatsoever, in that the team was bifurcated. And I say that, Martin, because Troy Taylor was the offensive coordinator. He was the play caller. That's a huge change for Sacramento State. So, you might say they went with stability there. But I'm a little more concerned if I'm a Sac State fan, because there's just no history of being good whatsoever. Now, there's no history of being good for Weber State for a while until Jay Hill came around. So you're right to bring that up as Jay Hill's been a constant in the Big Sky for a while, constant in Weber State being good. That's part of why Weber's had that defensive identity. But both these teams, I think they're on notice for teams that, if you're a Vandal, these are teams we got to get above if Idaho's going to win the Big Sky. And these two teams suddenly are candidates to not be as good next season. Doesn't mean they're going to faceplant, Martin, but two teams lose two very good coaches. That also promotes Jason Eck's already in discussion for one of the best coaches in the Big Sky, but two of the guys you might have taken right around Eck or above Eck are off the table now. So Idaho, just by default, looks like it's moving up coaching rankings as well. I want to shift to the other three teams. Now, those are all the Idaho State, Cal Poly, Northern Colorado, Martin. Those are all shitty teams from last year. Like that's a given. So of those three teams, which hire in your mind is, I don't know, that you might call the safest pick?
Out of Cal Poly, Northern Colorado, and Idaho State?
Yeah.
I think the safest, is Paul Wolf at Cal Poly, just promoting from within with him, just with what he built at Eastern. I think might have seemed the safest, and just a continuity of building up from running a completely 180ing the offense that Cal Poly was running, a triple option offense, to a more, I don't want to say balanced, but just a completely different, different offense than what they were running before Bo Baldwin was there.
Yeah, I would call Paul Wolf, even of the internal promotions, so like that includes Andy Thompson, even though I shifted conversation, I'd call Paul Wolf the safest hire. And Paul Wolf's been a head coach for quite a while. He coached at Eastern from 2000 to 2007, then Washington State from 08 to 11. And just side note, Martin, I got to bring this up. This is just one of the weird things about being a college football coach, or just any sort of professional coach. Paul Wolf does good enough at Eastern Washington to get a Power 5 job. His Power 5 tenure doesn't go that well, wins 2 games each of his first 2 seasons, 4 games his last season. Mike Leach is the guy who took over after Paul Wolf was fired. Of course, Mike Leach in the news, he passed away recently, which is kind of devastating for the Palouse. Mike Leach really turned around WSU, a guy who everyone on the Palouse is going to identify Mike Leach as a Palouse guy, and us Idaho fans, we're always going to have handshake gate between Paul Petrino and Mike Leach. So R.I.P. Mike Leach. But shifting back, Paul Wolf was good enough to get promoted to WSU, won 4 games in the Pac-12, which not lighting the world on fire, but there was an upward trajectory. He gets fired from that job, and he doesn't get a head coaching job for a decade, Martin. It's not like Paul Wolf forgot how to do what he does. He was in his seat. Look, in his time at Eastern Washington, Paul Wolf had 1 losing season. 2006, Eastern goes 3-8. Other than that, every season, Eastern had a winning record, made the playoffs 3 times, made a Final 8 twice in 2004 and 2007. So, pretty damn good background. It's kind of weird, too, that Bo Baldwin's the guy who succeeded Paul Wolf at Eastern, and now Paul Wolf succeeds Bo Baldwin at Cal Poly. But I think Cal Poly made the right call here. If you believe Bo Baldwin was taking Cal Poly in the right direction, Martin, internal promotion is the only way to go. And I think it would be quite a waste for Cal Poly to not promote internally. One, when you have a good, proven head coach already on your assistant roster who's ready to take the promotion. But can you think of what a waste it would be as a Cal Poly fan, Martin, you have that triple option for a long time. You bring in Bo Baldwin for, depending on how you want to count, 2 seasons, 2.5, whatever. He leaves, and then what are you going to do? You're going to go back, or what? I'm glad they stayed internal so they can at least continue the experiment, because Cal Poly had looked better in moments. They're at least more fun to watch in my mind. But I guess That's what I would go with the safe. Captain 58 comments section saying Wolf is safest. Ed Lamb sounds like the most steady pick. Hawkins is a great idea on paper, but Pokey is such a hole. I don't know what he'll do. Well, dude, that leads me to the next one. I think Captain stepped on your answer, Martin. What's the riskiest hire?
He said it best. I think the riskiest is Cody Hawkins at ISU, just because it seems like they tried to go with like a young up and coming guy and just hope it works out. But I don't know what to expect with this, because Cal Poly is literally going to be a build up.
You mean Idaho State, of course.
Idaho State, yeah.
Yeah. Look, you're not wrong either way. And we could transition back to talking about Cal Poly. That's fine with me. So this was weird in that the finalists for Idaho State, if you're a patreon.com/Tubs Club member, you knew who the finalists were for Idaho State quite a while ago. But the leaked finalists, Greg Woods from he's beat reporter for Idaho State, published this. Cody Hawkins, obviously a finalist, and Bruce Barnum out of Portland State was a finalist. Based on the people I talked to, some of the older alums kind of preferred Bruce Barnum because Barnum's friends with essentially everyone in Pacific Northwest football. But, Cody Hawkins, you got to admire that Idaho State at least took a swing. The Charlie Ragle era could not have gone worse in that there's complete roster turnover. Ragle wins a single game, Cal Poly, but Ragle wins a single game. Idaho State gets their ass kicked 1,000 times. It would never have been fair to compare Idaho to Idaho State as far as first-year head coaches anyway, Martin, because Idaho was a much more talented roster. But the state, just having your in-state rival Idaho makes such a huge turnaround with Eck in 1 year. And then Idaho State looks honestly worse than they did with Fennessy, and Fennessy's last year. And then the dude leaves after 1 year. You can understand why a safe pick maybe didn't feel appealing. Now Cody Hawkins, he's an Idaho guy, went to Bishop Kelly High School in Boise. He's obviously been around football forever. He's Dan Hawkins' son at UC Davis. That is how Cody Hawkins got the job at Davis. But unlike the other family tree in the Big Sky, that's no longer the Big Sky, Cody Hawkins was good in his time at UC Davis. Davis had the best offense in the Big Sky last season. Idaho got a front row seat to what that can look like in Moscow, and Davis kind of walked all over the Vandals. But I'm with you on this. This feels pretty damn risky. On the positive side, you'd have to think, Martin, Cody Hawkins probably has some pretty good connections to build a staff, and he's going to need to have a pretty strong staff. Whether he can get a strong enough staff to Pocatello relative to what he's going to need, I think, Martin, that's a real question, but he's going to have connections from his dad coaching forever that other guys wouldn't have. But I can tell you, if you look on paper at every other recent Big Sky hire, even this year, look, you got Ed Lamb won a championship in the Big Sky. Paul Wolf has won a championship in the Big Sky. Andy Thompson didn't win a championship in the Big Sky, but he's been a coordinator for a long time. He's been very good at Sacramento State, and he's been part of their program. So he is continuity. Do you look at, Jason Eck at Idaho, very good at South Dakota State for quite a while. Cody Hawkins stands out for having the thinnest resume because he's young. So I guess I don't know how you feel about this, Martin. Like, I applaud Idaho State for really taking a swing they need to. They need to do something to energize the fan base, and maybe Cody Hawkins being from Idaho helps explain how he stays there a little bit longer. But of all the fan bases, I think Idaho State should feel like there's the most margin for error in this pick. How about that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah. We're still going to waiting on the Weber State news for sure. But look, we're going to have 5 new head coaches in the Big Sky, Martin, which is, it's wild to say. Idaho with a coach there for 1 year, they get to be stable heading into next year. Idaho's one of the schools that doesn't have any coaching questions. And look, there's other schools we haven't talked about that do. It's a real question at University of Montana. Are they going to turn over their offensive coordinator, offensive line coach? Because Montana's been pretty damn unimpressive on the offensive side of the ball. It's still pretty early to find out about assistants leaving because they want to at other places. But in that Weber State, that's a separate question too, because Weber State there's no real news about what Weber State's going to do. You have to think that internal promotion, Garrett Duff might be a guy. He was a co-defensive coordinator for Weber State last year. He might be a guy in the mix. Mickey Mental, offensive coordinator, you'd think might be in the mix, although Mental's only been at Weber State 1 year. Although flip side, Jay Hill was the defensive coordinator for Weber State. So even if you promote a guy internally, it wasn't as a defensive coordinator, it wasn't a guy who had the type of coordinator responsibility, Martin, that like Andy Thompson had at Sacramento State, or, talking offensively. It wouldn't be a guy who had the type of responsibility that Cody Hawkins had at UC Davis. So yeah, any last thoughts you have that we haven't touched on the 5 coaching hires? Or the 5 new 5 places that are new hires?
It's definitely fun to follow all this stuff, and I think when you go to media day next July, it'll be a fun thing to interview all these new head coaches.
So this is miles away. I guess this is the way I want to hear how you view the head coaches. Of the 3 teams that are going to turn around, or 2 teams that are going to fall back, I'm going to use Northern Arizona or top 5 Portland State as our barometer. Based off the new hires, where the team moves up, the team moves down, which of these 5 teams is going to find themselves in that NAU top 5 Portland State level next season?
So like realistically, that'd be like 7-8, that kind of range in the Big Sky.
Yeah, like your ceiling's 4-4. You might go 3-5. You won't be the worst team in the Big Sky. You might be that barometer that if the teams beat you, that means they're good. If they lose to you, you suck.
My gut says Northern Colorado, but I think Sacramento State might have a big drop with with how much they're losing this year. I just think they're going to be losing a ton. They're going to be there's going to be regression from them.
Yeah, offensively, they're losing both quarterbacks, Jake Dunaway and Asher O'Hara. Cameron Scadaboo, Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year, enters the transfer portal. Pierre Williams, first team All Big Sky wide receiver, graduates. So there's a lot of offensive turnover for sure. I'm going to go a different direction. Now, I think Northern Colorado, man, Ed Lamb's a big deal. Northern Colorado, look, they picked up a few wins last season. We can put our crack research team on the overall Northern Colorado record. But Northern Colorado was not the least talented team in the Big Sky, but they were easily the worst coach team. And this is, Ed Lamb's going to bring in, this is going to be something Greeley just hasn't had experience with for a few years. Ed Lamb is going to bring a staff of guys who are professional football coaches, of guys who, even if they aren't the best, they at least know what they're doing. They're at least relatively respectable. And Ed Lamb's been good at shitty schools in the Big Sky. Like, again, Southern Utah. He won a Big Sky championship with Southern Utah and then set the table for DeMario Warren to pick up a Big Sky championship at Southern Utah. That's pretty damn successful. So honestly, Martin, do you think having adequate coaching would have bought Northern Colorado at least 1 win last year? I think 1, maybe 2. So I'm going to look at Northern Colorado. Too bad they don't have their long grass anymore. To be like, real question, are they going to be able to move up into the top 5? Because Portland State's losing a ton of upperclassmen. And if Portland State's moving down, someone else can move up.
Yep.
Well, there we go. We have one more big football topic to hit on. And Martin, have you decided on a day for your recruitment special yet?
Oh, yep. That's going to have to be next Wednesday when that is signing day.
Next Wednesday signing day is Martin's special. Wednesday. That would be Wednesday, December 21st. That's going to be the Martin signing day special. Big deal. So reason I bring that up is we do have another football topic to get to. We're not that far from basketball season being the main focal point, but we have football news. We're going to talk about it. But before we get to that other football news, we just got to talk about Hughes River Expeditions, one of our top 2 sponsors. we're working on top 5 sponsors. But if you're looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, don't look past your backyard. Hughes River Expeditions has been vandal-owned and operated since 1976 and ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River no return, the Salmon River Canyons, and Selway. Check out special trips like the one to see the Perseid meteor shower. Camp on pristine beaches, run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, and fish some of the most remote stretches of river in the country. You just bring your clothes, let HRE handle the rest. So grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now at 800-262-1882 or check them out at hughesriver.com. There was another piece of football news we have to talk about. It's a little bit on the speculative side, but the WAC ASUN conglomeration, it's the other Western, mostly Western FCS conference. Main news, this was article published on ESPN, made the rounds that the WAC ASUN has decided they're going to become an FBS conference as soon as possible. How is the WAC ASUN going to do that? No one has any idea. At this point, the WAC ASUN, it sounds like they're just going to say they're FBS. They're going to start scheduling each other. They're going to eventually schedule some out-of-conference games and just say, hey, we're going to charge FBS rates because that's what we are now. There certainly is not an invite from the NCAA extended to the WAC ASUN. There have been invites to some WAC teams that are leaving the conference, but there are no new invites to the rest of the WAC ASUN conglomeration, which when I say WAC ASUN, it's 2 conferences that were folding and then essentially made a co-op to be an actual conference. The teams that would be trying to move up out of the WAC faction of the WAC ASUN include Stephen F. Austin, Abilene Christian, Utah Tech, which you guys may know as Dixie State, but is now Utah Tech, a Big Sky favorite, former Big Sky members, Southern Utah, and Tarleton State. The Atlantic Sun, that's the ASUN part members, are Austin Peay, Eastern Kentucky, Central Kansas, and North Alabama. And joining Central Arkansas, my bad. The directional schools, man. I'm not the compass. I'm just reading. And then last team that would join to make it, I believe numbers 8, 10, whatever, would be UT Rio Grande Valley. So in that lineup of heavy hitters, Martin, I guess my first reaction is, what in God's name was your reaction to hearing this?
This, to me, sounds like desperation from both conferences, similarly to what happened around 2011, 2010, when the WAC was falling apart and they just tried to throw offers out the door to like Texas State, UTSA, Montana, and Montana State. And it just, Montana State obviously didn't accept, but just them trying to get some sort of life preserver to stay afloat and try and make football conference work.
Yeah, no disagreement. At this point, the WAC ASUN doesn't even know what they're going to call themselves. Like, here's from the ESPN article, a couple bullet points. The goal is for the team to be an FBS conference by the start of the 2024 season. So that's one season left. And then I guess they're just FBS. Now, like, to their credit, there isn't a formal process for becoming an FBS conference like this. I know there's revenue sharing in the current, CFP deal and the bowl deals, but again, it looks like the WAC ASUN is saying, well, if there's no formal process, we're just going to say we are, and you've got to say we're not. I don't have much more to add on the process because truly there is no process whatsoever. I know, like previously on the show, on Tubbs, our show, back when Alex Boatman used to be on, he would talk a little bit about how the WAC is a former FBS conference, so they don't technically need an invite. Pretty sure that was what you'd call speculation, because in everything published on this, that has not been touched upon whatsoever. I'm under the impression that because the WAC was an FBS conference, Martin, way before the current deals, that no one cares about the WAC being a former FBS conference. As far as current contracts are concerned, the WAC is a non-FBS conference because that's what it is. but the conference has to pick a name. And in addition to that, like there's a bit of a transition process in going from FCS to FBS. All the teams would have to go through that as far as potential bowl eligibility, which means they would not be bowl eligible right when they start. As far as a commitment, the schools have signed what ESPN calls a multi-party term sheet agreement, which sounds like a lot of words to say this is a contract, but not a contract, Martin. In the comments section, we have Captain58 saying whack A-Sun to FBS with a lot of question marks and some laughing faces. Jason Mayer, whack A-Sun decision started with a hear me out. Steve Kurtz says Simon Fraser to whack A-Sun, make it happen. Goddamn, yes. Jason Mayer, that or the South Park Underpants Gnomes, 1 collect underpants, 2 $3 profit. And then Captain58 says the whack just needs to fold. As a reference point, just we're joking about the whack quality because we saw Southern Utah was in the Big Sky and they were terrible. And honestly, Southern Utah was okay-ish in the whack. The top of the whack A-Sun, Abilene Christian 162. That's not terrible. Bottom is Utah Tech. That at 192. Those are Sagarin ratings. 162 in the Big Sky. That would have been just above Northern Arizona, well below Idaho. 192 is Portland State-ish. So it's almost an entire conference of Northern Arizonas and Portland States. That's why we're not exactly taking the whack A-Sun seriously. The A-Sun part, Jacksonville State was the best team, but Jacksonville State's transitioning to FBS. They're going to join Conference USA, so they're irrelevant for this part of the conversation. Austin Peay was the top school in the A-Sun that is staying in the A-Sun. They're at 151 Sagarin, which would, again, put them a little bit above Northern Arizona, far below Idaho and Sagarin. So, again, it's almost an entire conference of Northern Arizona's and Portland States. The direction, because I gotta connect this to Idaho, okay? Martin, if you were presented with 2 options, because we mercifully have fewer people in the fan base making the FBS, FCS distinction material to talking about Idaho football, which is say we have more people getting on board with, hey, we are where we are. If realignment takes place, things may change, whatever. But more people are getting happy, more people are showing up to the games. Question for you, man. If you were given 2 options, Idaho gets to be where they're at, or Idaho accepts an invite to the whack A-Sun, as this conference says it's going to be FBS with no guarantee it's actually going to be FBS, which would you rather have?
I'll take the stability after what we went through from 2012 to 2016 and so on. Was just not, it was fun being FBS, but I'd rather take the stability in the Big Sky Conference than whatever the clusterfuck shit show that the whack A-Sun's going to be.
Yeah, Jason Mayer in the comment section saying tier talk in 3, 2, 1. Except, Jason, the only problem here is because we've been an Idaho show forever. I've had that tier talk so many damn times that I don't care to have it until Idaho's actually moving into a tier. So you're correct. That is the direction. That's broadly the direction people feel like college football is moving right now. But this show is going to choose to skip that for the moment because the tiers aren't actually happening yet. Look, Martin, I'm 100% with you. I look through that potential schedule. Look, let me just bring up those teams again that are part of that conference. We got, if I told you, Martin, our schedule is going to be Stephen F. Austin, they're not bad. Abilene Christian, Utah Tech, Southern Utah, Tarleton State, Austin Peay, Eastern Kentucky, Central Arkansas, North Alabama, UT, Rio Grande Valley. Would you take that over a Big Sky schedule?
Oh God, no! It's just using buzzwords here. Like, it's good to have those regional rivals, and just playing them over teams from like South play schools from Texas and Louisiana and the East Coast.
I made the joke about Ed Lamb being the compass because he coached at Northern. He's now coaching Northern Colorado. Had coached at Southern Utah, and there's Dallas Hammer in the comment section. This show works so much better when that dipshit Dallas isn't talking. Maybe kind of depends for this topic, Dallas. I think you might not be wrong, but made the Ed Lamb joke because he coached at 2 places. The whack A-Sun covers the entire compass. We've got Southern Utah. We've got Eastern Kentucky. Oh man, I'm wrong. We just barely missed it. We've got Central Arkansas and North Alabama. There needs to be a Western school, Western Oregon. We got 4 points on the compass, but we didn't get the 4 cardinal directions on the compass. So, look, Martin, I'm with you. There's a few teams on here that if Idaho plays them out of conference, I'm fine with. Like, hey, Central Arkansas, if you want to complain about Eastern Washington's red turf, go check out, maybe Martin, while I'm talking, you can bring up a picture of Central Arkansas's pajama-inspired turf, which is purple and gray. And I have no problem with the purple and gray turf. I would have no problem if Idaho had a home and home with Central Arkansas, so our fans could get a good look at the purple gray striped turf in Central Arkansas. But it'd be a game. I want a game against a team in that conference. I want to play Utah Tech to pick up an OOC win. I want to pick up Southern Utah. So there he has it, Martin. Listeners can't see it. Viewers can. That purple and gray turf, that is not a joke. That is not a meme. That is what Central Arkansas plays on. I actually don't mind it at all, Martin. What about you? I'll get back to bitching about the teams, but the purple and gray turf, how do you feel about that?
It's unique and better than that school in Southern Idaho.
You're saying you prefer the purple and gray stripes over the Hoarder Corners of Holt Arena?
Oh, no, I'm talking about Riverside Tech.
Oh, Riverside Tech. My bad. You understand why I talked about the Hoarder Corners. Mark Triple P saying it's not blue in the comment thread. And look, dude, he's 100% right. In the comment section, Captain58 says, I wouldn't touch the Whack A-Sun with a 10-foot pole. Give me the Snowbelt Conference, a.k.a. Top Big Sky, Missouri Valley Football Conference to FBS. That's been a discussion for a while in podcast circles. There's a Twitter account called the Snowbelt Conference run by Andrew Schmidt. That's, kind of made that a little bit more of a meme, but Captain 58 is getting at the basics when Martin and I are talking about it. We want to be in a good conference. We're not obsessed with that magical letter B is not something we think Idaho should be chasing at the expense of having a good schedule right now or being affiliated with the universities we want to be affiliated with now. 2 people in comment section, Jason Mayer and Nick Weber, both saying fields are supposed to be green. And look, you're right. Except Eastern's red turf has been a great marketing play for them. It's a very cheap marketing play. I actually bought a square of Eastern's red turf as a fundraiser. And spoiler alert for everyone, if you ever buy field turf as a fundraiser, just be prepared to throw it away in a week because the pebbles underneath, there's nothing in place to secure them because it's field turf. It's not a rug for your house. I bought a square of the field turf. I brought it into the school I work at. And pretty quickly, my thought was, this is making my room gross as hell. I'm glad I made a $20 donation to Eastern Washington, but I am throwing this in the garbage and never buying it again. That said, if Idaho does it, I am definitely buying a bit of field turf. Nick Weber saying the veggies you're talking about are grayish brown mush. Correct. That's a response to the comment section. So before we look, Big Sky football is still going on. We need to talk Montana State in their playoff game, Martin, and hit a little bit. There's only a couple FCS games left in the entire season. We gotta pick those. For those who missed the Sacramento State Incarnate Word game, that was a fun as hell playoff game.
Go watch the highlights. It was very entertaining. I just watched the highlights, but man, I wish I would have watched that whole game now.
Watching the highlights from Incarnate Word is no different than watching them live. Incarnate Word scored 6 times in the second half in fewer than 7 minutes of time of possession. It was just incredible. And Incarnate Word won by 3? Yeah, they won by 3 because Sacramento State, they could have kicked the tie if their kicker had a 70-yard leg. So before we get to picking the Big Sky, got to talk about our other favorite show sponsor, Nick Davis. Nick Davis does kick-ass metal work. Here's an original Nick Davis does. He did it in conjunction with Tubbs at the Club. This is King Spud. With Jason Eck-inspired visor. Yes, we had a fashion research team for this. Nick Weber also makes signs like this. Metal, the kick-ass. Nick Weber, good God. Nick Davis. I apologize, Nick Weber, for accusing you of being Nick Davis. But Nick Davis does kick-ass metal work, does officially licensed University of Idaho stuff as well. If you contact Nick Davis on Twitter, or Tubbs of the Club at Tubbs of the Club on Twitter, or tubbsoftheclub@gmail.com. If this is something you want, hit us up. The King Spud ones with shipping are $75. And it supports Tubbs of the Club, supports Nick Davis too. Nick Davis raises a shit ton of money for University of Idaho for the Vandal Scholarship Fund. And he raises a ton of money for him because Nick Davis makes kick-ass Vandal stuff. It's honestly better than you can get anywhere else. That's it for the sponsor. So the two games we got to talk about, Martin. First, we've got Incarnate Word travels to North Dakota State for semifinal number 1. Who do you have?
As much as I want to say Incarnate Word just because their offense seems so much fun to watch, I think North Dakota State, they've been there before. They'll take care of business against Incarnate Word.
And North Dakota State beat Samford 27-9. And here's my takeaway of watching Incarnate Word. Fun as hell. Quarterback's real good. Aggressive play calling. They can stop no one. And North Dakota State, you have to expect they're going to have a slightly better defensive outing than Sac State did. Even though Sac State defensively, they were not terrible this season in the Big Sky. They were top 3 statistically in the Big Sky, but clearly they didn't have what they needed in the secondary. And that was Sac State's weakness all season. And that's what was their undoing against Incarnate Word. Weather, of course, in North Dakota State is a factor, except the North Dakota State plays in, Jason's saying whether it was a factor in the Incarnate Word Sacramento State game, it will not be a factor in North Dakota State inside the Fargo Dome. I'm going to go North Dakota State because I just think North Dakota State is going to be able to at least get a stop or 2. And I think that's all they're going to need. Honestly, a single stop from Sacramento State could have been enough in the second half, but they couldn't do it. The other semifinal, Montana State travels to South Dakota State.
This one, I think this one will come down to the final possession, but I think South Dakota State pulls it out in the end.
I'm going to go the other direction. Montana State absolutely destroyed William and Mary 55-7 in their quarterfinal. And the Bobcats, on the ground, Montana State is just preposterous. Against William and Mary, the Bobcats actually threw a little bit, 11 pass attempts to go 8 of 11 for 145 yards. But hey, that's 145 yards passing on 11 attempts. On the ground, Isaiah Afonso is back. He's still going to be a redshirt for this season, but Isaiah Afonso, one of the most talented running backs in the Big Sky. He rushes 11 times for 162 yards and 2 touchdowns. Made it William and Mary, and they did remind Big Sky fans, East Coast teams in the FCS, they get the easier playoff routes because of regional scheduling. I don't think there's a defense left in the playoffs that's going to be able to handle Montana State. The Bobcats are not that strong defensively, but the Bobcats just run over everyone. They made University of Montana the best rushing defense in the Big Sky heading into the last week of the season. They made University of Montana look like a WAC-A Sun team. So the Bobcats there, Brent Vegan, head coach, came from Wyoming via North Dakota State, where North Dakota State, they run the ball a ton. They're real sophisticated in their play calling in a way that a lot of schools are not. That's clearly part of Montana State's package. Montana State has 2 guys who are quarterbacks who can run very well. So that's additional complexity to Montana State offense. I'm gonna go with the Bobcats. I hate to say this because I'm not actually a Montana State fan. I don't know. I honestly think the championship is the Montana State-South Dakota State game. So I think whoever wins that game is going to beat the winner of North Dakota State Incarnate Word. So I'm going to go with Montana State. That's it, man. Martin, we've got your recruitment special next week, December 21st, where you're going to run through all the new Vandals we have. And that's kind of our last regular football thing for a while. Any other football stuff you want to hit on while we're trying to squeeze all the life we can out of? We're not talking that much about 2022 football. We talked about the playoffs because they're still going on, but all the new coaches, that's 2023. Idaho schedule, that's 2023. Anything else you want to hit on before we call tonight?
And I got nothing really else. It's like important. Just like I do want to just throw out reminders. Like, look, people that commit, like things can change. Don't get overly hell bent if a kid decides to go to a different school. It's not the end of the world. Don't be angry at what a 17-year-old high school senior makes, what he makes for his career. So that's all I got, and I'm excited for next Wednesday's show. It'll be fun. The class is looking really good so far.
Yeah, in the comment section, which I failed to hit, talking about Montana State, South Dakota State. We've got Nick Weber says go Jacks. That's South Dakota State. Captain 58 says Cats are looking good. Steve Kurtz says agree, Captain. Jason Mayer says South Dakota State's going to get punched in the face. Captain 58, I like Martin's take, but my money is on touchdown. Tommy, Bart Holt, Cats will lose because I can't stand them. Bart Holt, glad to have someone else who's not a big Cat guy in the comments section. Mostly Montana State, but a little bit split on South Dakota State. I just want to thank everyone for coming to listen. Dallas had a minor thing he had to take care of. He should be back Wednesday, the 21st, for the signing day special. And want to echo what Martin's saying, which is, look, part of why we spend time going over the recruits is, one, so that each year you guys know the new guys coming in. But look, year in, year out, we get the new recruits. People should be excited because, hey, it's new Vandals coming in. Most of these guys we're not going to hear about for a couple years. But if you listen and keep listening, you're going to find some names that do pop up that you heard on signing day, or you might hear them a couple years from now. So I don't have much else to add there, man. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And honestly, man, I can't wait to kick it to the Picasso of outro. You can, like, for viewers, you can see Martin. He got a little smile on his face right now. It's creeping wider and wider. He has his lineup ready. He is ready to shut me up by just clicking on the video.
This is producer Brian doing a terrible job of even finding what we're going to play us out with. So we're just going to call it good. See you guys Tuesday.